Welcome back. Joe Duncan's Talk Show, week 12. I've made it to week 12. One more week, that's week 13. That's an entire quarter. 3 months ago was 3 months ago. Been a hell of a week. Hasn't it always been a hell of a... Isn't every week a hell of a week? Not too many weeks where you're like, that was mediocre. But I don't know. I just think there's a lot going on. I'm still incredibly optimistic about the future. Maybe that's a failing. Maybe it feels weird to be living in a new skin. I'm going through a lot of changes. I guess we all are. I'm going to make this about me for a minute because I'm on the internet now and that's what you do. I'm just having a go of things. And I'm learning to live with uncertainty. And it's liberating. So if you're afraid out there, quit self-medicating. Just step into the fear. And guess what? It's probably going to be okay. Speaking of living with uncertainty, my guest today is Bob Dancer. This guy is a professional video poker player. He has made a fortune playing video poker. Has he made a living or has he made a fortune? I don't know. In any event, he's made a lot of money, and he talks about how he did it. He talks about his origins and other gambling he did. I think the overall with me is how this guy sort of hacked games, not illegally. I think he pushed back a little bit once when I used the word hack in the interview, but in a way, that's kind of what it is. The guy figured out, he looked at a system and he's going, oh, this is how I can beat it. And he did. And these are just tip of the iceberg stories. If you read his book, $1 Million Video Poker, he goes into detail on a lot of these things. And he's got a website. He writes a column for the Las Vegas Review-Journal. He's got a radio show. He talks all about this stuff and has for decades. And I think it's fascinating that this guy's been able to do this. And he's reached an age now. I've talked to him before. I met him years ago. And he's in an age now where he's kind of running out of Fs. So he's a little bit like, whatever. So I just kind of let him go. I didn't really cut him off. And it's on Zoom, so it's a little hard to manipulate the conversation. I just let him go. And he told some funny stories and some details in his background that I thought were interesting. So enjoy the ride with this interview with Bob Dancer. Bob Dancer, thank you so much for joining us. How are you, man?
Hey, Joe. Good to be here.
Oh, I appreciate it. I cannot wait to dive into this world. First, a little bit about your background. How long have you been playing games well? Because it sounds like you need to have a baseline for that in order to become a professional gambler.
Probably since I was 7 or 8. It started with, I was a sickly boy, so I spent a lot of time at home. And part of it was doing jigsaw puzzles better than it. Part of it was solving crossword puzzles. There would be part of it was reading books about chess and then challenging my dad, who was a decent enough player, but he hadn't played for 20 years or 40 years. And so after a while I could beat him. But a lot of it had to do with, there seemed to be a knack of figuring out games and being better than people who hadn't studied them a lot.
And then, so I imagine you played for a while, and at a certain point you said to yourself, because I know you lived in Los Angeles, and at a certain point you said, I'm going to move to Las Vegas. So when did you make that move and why?
Well, I'm going to take you back a little bit.
Okay.
My first professional gambling was backgammon, and that was in Las Vegas. And I studied and I studied and I played, and I did really, really well for several years. And this was in the 70s, and it was an era where it was seen in all the discos, which were fancy dance halls. And so there was a lot of new blood coming in. And as somebody who had studied, I had a huge advantage over them. I took disco dance lessons so I would fit in. I had bell bottoms and the appropriate shirts. And so I did not look like a backgammon hustler. And I did really well for several years. And then the fad dried up, and the only players left were better than me. This was in the late 70s. And so I finally had to bite the bullet and go out and get a job. Now, I had not worked for 9 years other than playing backgammon, and I wasn't down to zero, but I was close enough that I was nervous about it. So I talked my way into a computer programming job. It was in COBOL. I knew nothing about COBOL programming, but I had, back in graduate school, I was a research assistant where we had done Fortran-based programming. And so I was generally familiar with programming concepts. So I read a book on how to be a COBOL programmer one weekend and went to the interview on Monday. It turned out one of the guys who interviewed me wanted to talk about playing blackjack in Las Vegas, because I also had done that some. And another one was really fascinated with backgammon. So they didn't really check out my skills very much and said, we filled the programming job, but there's one opening for a systems analyst. How would you like that? And I was going, sure, I can do that. I had no idea what a systems analyst is. And I had 5 days to figure out, to go get books and read what is a systems analyst, and showed up, and was quite nervous about it all, but it worked out pretty well. And I was in various programming jobs, eventually moving up to database administrator. While I was working, I, to a lesser degree, played backgammon at night, because I had continued to study and there were more newcomers coming in, and so I was getting better. And it's a whole different game. Gambling when you're also carrying down a full-time job is when you're not. It's to be good at gambling, it's a full-time job. It is a lot of concentration, and you can't be working 50 hours and gambling 50 hours in the same week and doing your best at both. So also practicing my blackjack skills so I could move to Vegas and become a millionaire. And so eventually the job got shortchanged, and they merged with another company, and my job was eliminated, and it was between me and the other guy from the other company, and he was more dedicated than I was, so I was out of there. So now I was unemployed, early 90s, still going to backgammon a little bit, but picked up a job teaching country western dance at a nightclub, teaching them how to two-step and waltz and line dance and all those West Coast swings and those kind of things, and which was not good for a lot of money, but it's really good to get laid. There's no telling that there are the girls who would come to these.
I'm just making a note here. Girls getting laid. Thank you, Bob.
Yes, that's why you become a professional gambler too. That's one of the main reasons I did, because I had read that women really like professional gamblers, and we would be able to treat them with all these nice hotel rooms and meals and stuff like that. On a practical basis, I got more benefits from females for being a dance teacher than I ever did from being a gambler. But now we're in the early 90s. I was getting ready to move to Las Vegas. There were a lot of promotions there, which I liked, but they worked better with a partner. And so I was trying to convince my girlfriend to move to Las Vegas too. And she was somewhat reluctant. This being a professional gambler was more my dream than it was hers. But finally, her job wasn't going so good, so she said, okay. And so Jenny and I moved to Vegas in 93. We had $6,000 in bankroll to live on, to gamble with. That was it. And it was a dream. And so there were lots of blackjack promotions, which I was playing then, where for out-of-state people, you come in and you play for 4 hours a day, and they give you so much money in free play chips of various sorts. And so there would be these bonuses, and they would give you meals. And so a free buffet at the Riviera was, it's basically an all you could keep down meal. But when it was your only meal of the day, you ate a lot. I was a lot skinnier then, but with those meals, didn't take long to be not so skinny. Uh, we cashed a lot of coupons. Several casinos were giving away uh, 2-for-1s on blackjack, or 7-for-5s, or 10-for-5s, and we would find ways to collect these coupons and hit several. We were only supposed to hit one a day per person, and we abused that one several things. We were averaging about 300 a week from coupons, and then our gambling was on top of that. So that was for 2 people. So this was not what you would call high roller living. It was, but I was making it in Vegas.
Yeah, that's a win. That's the fact that you can do that on a regular basis, even if you weren't living large. That's a win already.
Yeah, making it in Vegas had been a dream, and some of the dealers in the blackjack games that we would come and we would cash more than one coupon knew we were abusing the system, and they would mock us, because when you're playing bet 5 to win 7, it is a huge advantage, but there's no money in there for tips. You cannot tip. You quickly go down to 0 if you're tipping on wins. And so the dealers figured out what we were doing and would mock us. And to me, I would let it roll off my back. But Jenny was rather shamed by this whole situation. She was, is, I guess, Chinese, born in Taiwan. And saving face and things were very important to her on something that wasn't that important to me. Part of our gig was to play blackjack, where I would tell her what to play. Excuse me.
Mhm.
And so the fact of the matter is, Jenny knew how to play. And this was just a good ruse so that I could see her card. We could see each other's cards. And so the more cards you see, if you're counting, the more it helps you make correct decisions. And it was embarrassed Jenny that I was trying to make the dealers feel that she couldn't figure out how to play the game, because she'd been doing it for a couple of years now, and they knew because they'd been seeing her for a couple of years. And she couldn't get over the fact that that was an act you had to play to succeed. So eventually she left, probably in '94.
Wow. It's interesting because it seems like that's yet another stumbling block on the road to becoming a professional gambler. Because I'm sure you didn't think one of the pitfalls is going to be my partner is going to feel shamed or embarrassed by my strategies here, and yet you got to deal with it. So I'm sure there've been a lot of those along the way. Now, when did you switch to video poker?
In the coupon deals in blackjack that we were playing, we would have to go to the same casinos all the time, and play for 4 hours a day, sometimes for 2 days. And we'd be doing this every other week. We're pretending to fly in from Los Angeles to play our trade. And so after a while, they figured out we probably weren't flying in from Los Angeles, even though we still had California ID. And so some of them, we got barred in various places. Some said, you can still play, but you can't play these promotions. Others says you can't play blackjack anymore. So we were running out of opportunities. And that's when Jenny decided to go. I said, well, we're going to have to take pay cuts and tighten our belts to make it. And she, who had worked hard, kind of felt she was due for a raise and not a pay cut. So that's when she went back to LA. But I went to Gambler's Bookstore, figuring out I wanted to find a different game to play that I could learn to be good at. And I was willing to work very, very hard so I didn't have to go get a job. I don't survive well in 9-to-5 corporate America. My personality sometimes could be summed up as doesn't play well with others all the time. And so for short periods of time, I get along really well and I can talk my way into jobs. But after a while, people find my habits irritating. So in being a lone wolf in the gambling, you can get away with. You can be whatever you want. But working in a corporation, you have to do things that don't go. You have to swallow a lot of stuff to work there, and I didn't want to do that. So I came across video poker, bought every book there was. The pickings were kind of slim. One book I especially liked was by Stanford Wong. It's called Professional Video Poker. Stanford Wong had written a lot of books on blackjack. He's one of the heroes of blackjack. And so I figure anything on any gambling game that he wrote would be excellent. And it was pretty good, but it dealt with playing progressives. A progressive is when you, most royal flushes pay 4,000 coins. So for a quarter player, that's $1,000. For a dollar player, that's $4,000. And if it's been a while since a royal has been hit, it goes higher. The royal could be from 4,000 coins up to 5,000, up to 6,000. And it's going up one unit at a time. And there's an art to playing these games different than regular games. So that's the game I learned. It was 8-5, jacks are better. Now the 8 and the 5 refer to how much you get for the full house and the flush respectively. Betting 1 coin. And so that was a game I knew. The best game I found right away was a 9-6 jacks are better with a 4-coin royal, which usually royals take 5 coins to load. This one only took 4. And it was about 100% game off the top. But the only strategy I had was 8-5 bonus progressive. So it's kind of like when your only tool is a hammer, everything kind of looks like a nail. So I started playing this with the improper strategy. But I got a hold of some software and plugged it in and started making the proper adjustments to it. But it was early software. It was Stanford Wong's. It was a lot of limitations to it, a lot of software. Each version of software comes out, has a lot more features to it. This is a really tedious software to run, but it served my purpose.
Yeah, there's a lot more. I've since dabbled in the world of video poker, and the software has gotten fantastic. And to anybody who wants to take up video poker, I cannot recommend simulators enough. Definitely get some of that to practice on. Now, when did Shirley come along, and how did she take to having gambling in the family business? Because as you would learn from Jenny, it's not the easiest thing for a partner to live with. So, how did that work out?
I met Shirley in '94, and she lived in Southern California at the time. She was a representative of a dry cleaning company where the dry cleaners have their stores in Albertsons or Smith's supermarket. So there were 4 or 5 of them in the greater Las Vegas. So once a month, she would drive to Las Vegas to do whatever the supervisor does to these stores and solve the problems that had arisen in the last month. And she went to Sam's Town Dance Hall, which is where I hung out frequently. I like to dance. When I don't have a lady, that's the best place for me to meet them. Since I'm better than average dancer, then that can make up for the fact that nobody confuses me with George Clooney or Robert Redford. But so she came in and we hit it off. And she told me that she only came to town one weekend a month. And I told her I was trying to make it as a professional gambler. And once having a steady girlfriend one time a month could work. And if she was ever interested. So she went back to California and thought about it. She hadn't dated in 8 years since a divorce and decided that she would give it a try. But with Shirley, the fact that I was a gambler came in on day one. She knew about it from the very get-go, and it was something within her decision-making process from the outset. With Jenny, we met dancing, and she knew me as somebody who was a good dancer. And the fact that, I mean, gambling wasn't really part of the deal when she first met me.
How hard was it for Shirley to deal with the volatility of the income of a gambler? Because as we all know, you're not making the same amount every week.
It was very hard. We started out during the year we courted before she moved to Vegas. I came across a big game and just hit a $12,000 set of 4 aces on a game at Bally's Casino on the Strip. And so I called her up in excitement and just told her about it. And I was pretty giddy about it. And she was excited too. She didn't know what I was playing or why, but $12,000 sounds like a lot of money. So that was pretty cool. So we finally got married. And the first day after we were married that I lost $3,000 all in one day, she went ballistic. There's a difference. When the money was community property, she didn't handle losing all too well. As much as I would explain how we had an edge, she had the checkbook, she had copies of the records, so she knew that our wealth was growing and that we were doing well. It's every time we won, it's because in her mind we were good players and we're doing everything right. Every time we lost, it's because the damn casinos are cheating us. And she'd get really tense during the losing streaks, and sometimes losing streaks last a long time. And it was really tough on her.
And yet, she was with you the night of your big win, and in fact, was playing the machine that got the biggest win of your career. Can you tell that story about that night?
Sure. And it can tell it straight out, or there's a whole lot building up to it. But we were playing at the MGM Grand, and the MGM Grand had made some mistakes. They had actually, they sent me a postcard a previous year at random saying new members come in and get double points for a month. And I went in, and the only game they had that was good was a $25 machine.
And if I may just tell the audience, points are when you join the slot club, they give you a little card with a magnetic strip on it that you can put in any machine, and you get points based on how much you gamble. And in this promotion, they were giving you double the amount of points.
Yeah, it looks kind of like a credit card. And at that point, they were giving cash back. I mean, after a while playing, you'd go back and give them $1,000 or so. And so the only game that made sense to play was a $25 game. But in video poker, it's a 5-coin game, which means $125 a play. Now, at that time, I had not played that large very much, but this was a significant edge. So I went around to several of my friends wanting to know if they would like to be partners, and none of them wanted to be partners. So I decided to bite the bullet and hopefully do well before I went broke. And after, and then I realized I was doing very well, and you were getting comps coming out of the yin yang. And so New Year's Eve of 2020, which where it was a huge event in Las Vegas. And so Shirley had a girlfriend who had a rich doctor who wanted to come in for the New Year's weekend and go to lots of shows and dinners and stuff. And what could we get them for a nice hotel room and stuff? So we ended up charging them, I think it was $10,000 for the weekend, but included Barbra Streisand tickets for New Year's Eve night, included a concert by the Eagles, and it included a concert by Tina Turner. Now, those may not be your audience's favorite artists, but 20 some years ago for an older audience, that was a pretty hot deal. So they got a suite, and we took them out to dinner, and they could go out to fancy dinners every night and just charge it to the room. We had more comps than we knew what to do with. So so there's these extra sorts of revenue coming in. Plus we got to stay at the mansion. The mansion is heaven on earth. There's 29 villas, and we only got to stay in the smallest villa. But in the smallest villa, the bathroom was bigger than my first apartment.
Mhm.
It had 3 TVs in the bathroom, not to mention the other ones throughout. The sheets were this really fine Egyptian high string cotton one, and what it was every day we'd have a new fruit bowl with exotic fruit, and these aren't rooms you really can buy. When you do, it was the room we got to stay in was $9,000 a night, but they're usually given away for free to the high rollers. But this was in December of 1999, but that's a slow time in Vegas. People are getting ready for Christmas, they're doing Christmas parties. Not much happening in Vegas. So we got to experience the mansion, and we'd hit $100,000 royal. So life was pretty good.
Now excuse me for interrupting. The $100,000 royal was you playing the $25 machine. Is that correct?
Yes, that was my first 100,000 royal. Over the next, and we surely wanted to quit, figuring out we were so far ahead, way above expectation. And I was going, well, how would you like to tell people that you hit $200,000 royals? Oh, that'd be great. I was going, well, you can't hit the second one if you quit right after you hit the first. Well, she couldn't argue with my logic. She wasn't thrilled about it. So we kept playing. And all through the next year, they have promotion. We found out about new promotions. One is if you play $1 million coin in a month, you get at that time an extra 60% in slot club benefits and comps and in year-end things. And so it was a pretty strong game. Kept playing, didn't do spectacularly well, but we played. And then September, they made a huge mistake. They moved the high limit room, and some of the games that we like to play now receive slot club points, assuming it was a slot machine rather than a video poker machine. Now, most casinos give more to players for playing slot machines because slot machines are much tighter. The casino makes a lot more money on them. They want you to play the slot machines. And so they give you quite a bit more. So they were giving us quite a bit more on the best games in the house, in addition to these promotion. So it was worth probably $600-700 an hour when they were making these mistakes. So I talked to an attorney and I said, can I go to jail for playing a machine that I know is paying more than it should in slot club points? And so he researched it and charged me $1,000 and said, no, it's not against the law. And if you do get arrested, I'll be happy to take it to court for you. But of course, that would be more money. And I didn't want to get arrested. I didn't want to find out who I would meet in jail. So we played it and played it hard, like on the order of 80 hours a week. And we started playing bigger games. So it was regularly that we would play $5 five play or $10 five play. Now, a $5 game normally is $25 per hand. A five play is $125. $10 five play was $250 a hand, and you get lots of W2Gs. Now, a W2G is a government tax form that you get every time you hit a jackpot of $1,200 and higher. And these come out regularly. Now, they paid these all individually. They had what they call an accumulated log, where they would write down each jackpot and you would initial each line. And at the end of your session, they would just write you one W2G for the total amount. But they would come and they would pay you in cash, which is a slow way to play the game. Putting in $100 bills into machines are really slow. There are faster ways to be paid these days, but back then we put the money back into the machine. So we were doing well, and we decided periodically to take pot shots on a $100 machine. The $100 machine was still $500 a hand. You get W2Gs every time you get 3 of a kind or higher, which happens about more than one hand in 3.
Yeah.
So you play a couple of hands, you get something, and they come and they pay you. There you could get cash, but they would have tokens, $100 tokens, and it's much faster to slip $500 tokens into a machine than it is to bill acceptors are rather slow devices. So it'd be against the wall, and they would have racks of these coins, and we'd stack them up in the middle. And if we got a 4 of a kind on that machine, it was $12,500, which is several of these racks that we'd put against the wall between the machines, so it's in a secure place. And so we did okay on that machine, but jacks are better. The game we were playing is a game where you generally gradually lose until you hit the royal flush, meaning ace, king, queen, jack, 10 of any suit, happens approximately one time in 40,000. So that's not something that happens every day. And so we were generally losing as expected. So on the night of the ESPY, they had ESPYs at the MGM Garden, which is the arena at the MGM Grand. And the ESPYs are the Sporting World, sponsored by ESPN. They're the Sporting World's the best baseball player of the year, the best golfer of the year, the best team of the year, the whatever it was, but had to do with sports. And so we had 11 tickets to go to the ESPYs that we could give away or sell or whatever we want to do with them. And afterwards, somebody wanted to see us play. So I was playing a $25 machine, $125 a hand. And Shirley was playing the $100 machine, $500 a hand. Now, Shirley she was better than anybody in the audience, but we wanted it 100% perfect. 500 a hand was a big stake, so we had all 4 our eyes whenever she would make a play. And it happened the machines were at right angles, so I was basically at my machine. I guess my left shoulder was 3 feet behind her back and where she was looking forward. So when she was playing, I would turn on my machine and watch, and we'd agree on the play, and she'd do it. And then when she'd get a jackpot, which happens every 3 hands or so, I would just play away at my machine while she talked to our guests. And after a while, I hit a royal flush on my machine, which is $100,000. And I just sat there waiting to see how long it would take them to notice. And eventually they did. And they were all excited and says, well, now this has to be the time to quit. So no, why? It's still a good game. It's still, so we kept playing. And then a bit later, Shirley connected on a one for $400,000, a royal. And I have never hit one that size. She did. We were both in shock. We had basically, it was a wet dream that we would ever get a $400,000 royal. But when it happened, we just kind of were speechless. Some of the jackpots, you stand up and yell and scream and hooray, but we just couldn't say a word. And so that was our biggest night. Have not touched that night since. I have had nights where I've had $200,000 royal flushes and gone home 180,000 ahead. But I have had nights where I've hit $240,000 royal, which is a $100 3-coin machine. But I've never had a night where I've had 100,000 or 500,000 all at once, other than that one night. So we go home and said, well, what do you want to do? How should we invest this? So Shirley was always nervous that eventually we're going to go broke. She still, no matter that we've had inordinate success and we were winning considerably and now had, including this jackpot before we paid taxes on it, well over $1 million in bankroll, where we'd started out several years before with maybe 300,000. She had the thought eventually we're going to go broke, because she'd always been told that gamblers go broke all the time. So she said, can we pay off the mortgage on the house so that if you do go broke, at least we still have the house. So I didn't think that was the best use of the money, but keeping mama happy is overall an okay thing to do. So we did. We paid off the house. So our house was a $400,000 value, market value at that time, which was 2001. And so she was happy with that. We kept playing, and but the MGM, though, that was the beginning of the end.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's probably the kind of thing that makes casino managers a bit unhappy and nervous. So well done.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing, the information that gets up to the second floor, and why are we letting this guy play? I was, at the time, was writing articles for Strictly Slots and Casino Player magazines, and those were 2 different magazines owned by the same company. But copies would be in hotel rooms in most casinos in the country. And you would go into a hotel room and there would be the latest copy of Casino Player or Strictly Slots or both. And so I had a national audience, and I would be writing articles about what fun promotions they had at the MGM Grand, and how we did this, and how I almost ended up dancing with a man, and and this promotion is how I did something sneaky, and da 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 da. And so people would come in and they'd want to play. They figure, if this is where Bob Dancer plays, well, we should play there too. And so the MGM put up with a lot of my winning because they felt I brought in a lot of new players, most of whom did not have my skill set. And plus they had really bad player tracking system. For example, in September, before we hit the, no, it's actually December, we asked for our year-to-date records as to how well we've been doing. And they showed that between us, we were down 400,000. And my records showed we were ahead 250,000.
How
So
did you
other
do
than
this,
that,
Bob?
other than that, the records were spot on.
How did you do this? If you can say.
Well, I can, and it doesn't work anymore.
Okay.
I can tell you the technique, but the systems have been changed since then, and they don't work. It had to do with what they call card pulling. Now, a card is, at that time, your player's card. When you hit a jet, to make it easy, we'll just say you're betting dollars 5 at a time. And so you have your card in, and your bet, it registers that you played $5. So your total win goes down by $5 right when you hit the button. And then at the end of the hand, whatever you win is going the other direction. So by the end of the session, they know how much you won or lost. But when we would get hands like, let's say, dealt 4 of a kind, which on a dollar machine is $125, not so much. But on a $5 machine or $5 5-play machine, it could be thousands of dollars. And so we're dealt it, and we accidentally pull our card. So our initial bet is still in there, but the win isn't. And then we have it back in by the time the attendants come. And they knew we were pulling our card, but it was just, they didn't do anything about it. And you could do this at most casinos to disguise the amount you're winning. And it was very useful.
It sounds like it. It sounds like a very smart tactic. It's too bad that it doesn't work, but of course, you would leave it to you to figure this hack out. On that note, are there any hacks that you can share for the audience? Basic stuff. Again, don't give away all the magician secrets, but the average buddy of mine who goes to Vegas, they get drunk, they lose their $300, and they go back home. Are there things that the average gambler can do to slow the speed of losses, or even win, or get some free comps? What would you recommend that the average gambler doesn't even know about?
A lot of them have to do with the clock. If a casino is offering double points, 5 times points, whatever it is, some kind of points, often the promotions go from midnight to midnight. Often they go from 3 a.m. to 3 a.m., depending on how you do it. But if it is, let's assume it goes from midnight to midnight and you're still playing at midnight. In many casinos, if your card is still in there at midnight, the promotion doesn't end until you pull your card, which, because when it's in there, it still assumes it's the day in which you put it in. So you can extend multiple point days, or on the other end of it, let's say you get there at 11:45, depending on which day is multiple points, it can be right to pull out your card and put it back in again at midnight, or leave it in. So you have to read the rules as to when things start and when things end. Another hack, as you call it, that can work is adding up promotions together. Often casinos have many things going on at once. Some of them are worthless to gamblers, such as 2-for-1 margaritas on Tuesday is not really much help to a gambler, but it could be multiple points. It could be earn so many points and get a jacket. It could be the top 20 players in these 2 months, get this happening to them. could be drawing tickets, could be, it's a number of things it could be. It's limited only by the imagination of the marketing department, which, so there's often you can get 2, 3, or 4 promotions happening at the same time. So for this to happen, you have to know the slot club 2 ways from Tuesday. And the ins and learning the slot club benefits is every bit as important, every bit as difficult, every bit as easy as learning the strategy correctly. Just going in and starting playing is you are giving up a lot.
On that note, you have a long history, and you revealed a few of them already, of ways that you can figure out the game that that the casino probably didn't intend. For example, the MGM story about how they didn't realize they were making this huge mistake. Well, I remember from your book, from $1 Million Video Poker, there was a story about something involving Easter eggs. And there were some Easter eggs that were heavier than others, and you somehow figured this out. Do you know the story I'm talking about?
I do know the story we're talking about. In the book, I called it The Casino My Ship Has Come In. It was the Colorado Bell in Laughlin, but it's changed owners a couple times. And so the people who designed that promotion was long gone. It had to do with, there was an Easter egg promotion. Every time you got a jackpot of $250 or higher, you get to draw an Easter egg. And inside the Easter egg was a slip of paper that was from $5 to $500. So common sense would tell you that 75% of them are $5 and 20% of them are $10, and fewer and probably only one 500 in the whole promotion, and maybe 250s, etc. So then 2 things happened to make it easier to figure out. They put the prices on different colored paper. So the $5 ones were on navy blue paper, and the $10 ones were purple. But the $500 one was green, and the $50 one was, I don't remember. But they're all different colors. Now the eggs weren't heavier, they were translucent. Once you've noticed, they were barely translucent, meaning you can a little bit see through the egg to see what was on the inside. And so you couldn't see through all of them. They were thin plastic, about the size of a tennis ball, only egg-shaped. But you can kind of see through it a little bit, and so you can see which ones to get. So once we figured out, the blue and the purple look almost the same, so any other color was great. And especially as we learned the code as we went around. And then we did a distraction. Jenny was still, this was after Jenny had gone home, but before Shirley had come along, neither fish nor fowl kind of relationship. And so she'd come for a weekend, and we spent it in Laughlin, partly because there was a wedding nearby where she had to go. And so we built out a distraction. And so when we got one of these 4-of-a-kinds and had to pick the Easter egg, one of us would walk around, one of us meaning me, would go around the chair chanting. Now, politically correct, it's probably considered racist to do it now. I did not at all consider it racist then, but I was going hoya, 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 hoya. It's kind of somewhat reminiscent of an Indian chant. And if you're offended by it, I apologize. Did not. And so people would watch these, and while I was doing that, Jenny would be scanning all the eggs to find out the ones with the right color. And so then we would use telepathy with each other. And we had a signaling system. And so I would put my hand across, and eventually Jenny would say where to stop it. And $250. Yeah. And, it was it was one of those things that just nobody else had figured out, or not many. We were playing on a machine that was extra good for that promotion. Because every four of a kind paid $250. The game we'd come there to play, Jacks Are Better, four of a kinds pay $125, which would not be good for that promotion. So the double bonus game was a better game to play, including the promotions.
That's brilliant. And I love that story because it illustrates the ability to figure out a game overall, not just the odds of video poker, but no, the entire experience. How do I get on that? How do I get that promotion? How do I get that? Bob, this has been a treat. I really dig all these stories, man. Tell everybody where they can find you, because I know you're doing a bunch of things these days.
Well, 2 times a year for 10 weeks, I teach at the South Point, which is a casino in Vegas. We haven't had it for a year and a half for pandemic reasons. We're taping this in April of 21. We expect to have them this September. We don't know for sure if they're going to be allowed with the CDC regulations, and the governor in Nevada passes rules and stuff. So, but we're probably going to have classes. So if we are, the class schedule will be on bobdancer.com. Classes are free, and you're welcome if you're at least 21 years old. I have a regular blog, a weekly blog that I write about mostly video poker, mostly, sometimes other times gambling, sometimes just a book I've read and think we're sharing. But I've been doing it for more than 20 years. So there's 1,000 of these 800 word articles that are out there. You can find them at bobdancer.com, and they're free to read. And weekly, I do a podcast with Richard Munchkin. It's called Gambling with an Edge. It is geared towards talking with professional gamblers, and so the audience can be a better gambler tomorrow than they were yesterday. And we sometimes we talk to authors of books, sometimes to lawyers. We've talked to somebody in the gaming control board. We talk about people in surveillance, about how they pick people off. They talk, there's so many different ways to win at gambling, and that's what we talk about every week. And so gamblingwithanedge.com is the website. Now my blog is also posted there, and the shows are posted there. They're also posted on YouTube, Stitcher, iTunes, and various other places you can get podcasts. They're all free. And I do answer polite emails. My email address is bobdancerlasvegas, all one word, at yahoo.com. I am not looking for a pen pal. When they go on tour, they go on more than 3 times, I'll usually, as politely as I can, saying, keep your questions to once a month. I'm not here to answer questions for free forever. If you want a private consulting session, I can do that. And sometimes I get really nasty notes back about how somebody bought a strategy card for me years ago, and so that somehow entitles them to consulting forever and ever. Amen. And
the high cost of being a rock star, Bob. What can I tell you?
Something like that. It's unlike a rock star. I have no groupies. I don't. Used to be in Vegas. Especially playing graveyard, which is my favorite time. Once a month or so, a hooker would come up and ask me if I wanted a good time. I'd be playing a fairly high denomination machine. So they figure if a guy can afford to pay that, he can afford to be relieved of the money. And so I would always send them on their way. Now I'm 74 years old, and for some reason, either there's fewer hookers or they're after younger prey. So I don't know.
Well, go figure. What can I tell you? And by the way, thanks for that, because I think that woman that you shooed away once came up to me at Ellis Island. So thanks a lot, Bob. That distracted me for 10 seconds. I didn't need that.
Ellis Island, for our listeners, is, well, let's call it a lower end casino. It is, it's actually known for a lot of fights and stuff go on there. It's behind the strip. It's a block east of the strip on Koval between Flamingo and Harmon. And
Conveniently located next to an AM/PM.
yes, and they had some really good gambling deals for a long time, and they have finally decided they wanted to eliminate the players who could beat them. So a lot of us got kicked out. If you get good at video poker, you will be restricted in various ways at a number of casinos. It's sad but true.
It's good to have career aspirations. Bob Dancer, thank you so much for all these stories, tricks, and tips. It's morning. I haven't been drinking. What's wrong with me? Thanks a lot. I really appreciate your time, man.
Thank you very much, Joe. So go have your drink so you no longer people have to worry about what's wrong with you.
Thank you. I think I will. Cheers. That was Bob Dancer. Wasn't that fun? I told you you'd enjoy that ride. Character, isn't he? I mean that in a good way. It's admirable how this guy looked at the universe of video poker and other games of chance and said, okay, this is how you do it. Got it. And he figured them out, like one after another after another. And I think that's what we're all doing in life. We're all just going, wait a minute, how do I figure this game out? And as he explained with, for example, backgammon, sometimes the best choice is to quit the game. So if there's anything in your life that you don't like, maybe, stop trying to hack it. Stop trying to figure out the odds. Stop trying to figure out edges. Maybe just quit. Whatever it is. Shake things up. You can always go back, and you probably don't want to. This is why you're upset about these things. So if it's a job or a relationship or a habit or, some food that you keep eating or some chemical, just knock it off. Maybe you're not going to win. Maybe quitting is the win. There's all kinds of ironies in life. Have you noticed? Sorry for not wearing a real shirt when I say these deep things.